Superintendent of Basehor-Linwood Schools. We're very excited to be able to bring this message to you today and share this information with you this evening. If you haven't taken a look out in the parking lot, anybody driving by thinks this is probably about the safest place to be in Leavenworth County right now. We very much appreciate all the organizations and units and fire department, EMTs, police departments from Leavenworth County as well as from Basin to be here with us this evening. And parents, thank you for taking an extra night to be here to learn something that will help you along the way and for you to help your child. This presentation was given this morning at the high school and this afternoon at 1 o'clock at our middle school. So I'm excited to be able to introduce these people and get this presentation started. First of all, Josh Magaha is a 2000 Basehor-Linwood graduate, and Josh now works with the KCK Fire Department and is going to share some information with you. And then we'll follow that up with former KCK Fire Chief James Z. And welcome you, and I appreciate you being here. Then we're going to follow up with Trooper Brian Clark from Trooper Clark, thank you for being here. KCK Fire Department, Kansas Highway Patrol, excuse me. And then he has a friend with him this evening, I believe, named Chase, and so we'll be able to see the dog in action. So again, without further ado, I want to go ahead and get started. Josh will explain to you, share with you all the organizations that are out here in the foyer. We do have different organizations here that you may want to stop by and get some information from. And then also, one last thing from me, check and see if you have your house key. This was turned in this evening. And if you're missing something, find the person in the room code. All right, let's get started. Josh.
Thank you. And also say John Diaz. He's KCKFD narcotics. He's a captain. He's also the DA task force. My name is John I've been a firefighter for almost 22 years. I've been 15 years at KCK. I spent a little bit of time in Leavenworth County before that. So the detail at a hazmat station for the last 15 years. I got voluntold. I'm joking. That's kind of where I've been. So the way I got involved in fentanyl, and I do want to say we had a chance to talk to all your kids, if your kids were here earlier today. It was myself, Libby Davis, who had a personal story from a 16-year-old who passed away from fentanyl from Mill Valley, Captain Diaz, and his handler, Carlos, and his dog, Toby. So they did the high school, the junior high, or the middle school this afternoon. So back to me, started in hazmat. So in 2015, I went to Baltimore with James Z, who's the assistant chief. He was our hazmat captain and a hazmat chief. Sent me to Baltimore, and I learned everything about weapons of mass destruction, because that's what hazmat, that's what we do. So when I went to a class that was sponsored by the DEA, it was fentanyl. Didn't realize what fentanyl was going to turn into. So you're going to see a video, at the very end of the video, I'm going to start off with, it's the fire chief for Baltimore City. My cousin is a BC, the battalion chief for Baltimore City, and they're seeing 30 to 60 overdoses a day in Baltimore City. So I'm going to start with the video. I will give a warning for ones with kids. There's a little bit explicit, and I'm showing it's a heavy topic, so that some of the videos you're going to see tonight are not the best videos, but it gets the point across.
Oh, say can you
Get him on the ground. Get him on the ground. Sir.
It is the #1 public health challenge of our time.
Sir.
It's not a poor people thing anymore. It's not a inner city ghetto drug anymore. It's everywhere.
It's hard to even recognize some of these people, and they've lost a lot of their humanity down here.
Tomorrow's not promised.
It's not heroin that's killing our people. It's fentanyl.
I'm not gonna die from this. Like, I'm not gonna die from this.
I was like, we went from 20 overdoses to 80 overdoses in a matter of a month, and we're like, what the hell happened?
I feel like it's a waste of my life. It's a fucking waste of everything.
I would say that fentanyl is a horseman of the apocalypse, and it's the one named death.
All right, so that's fentanyl. That's what 2017 is when that was filmed, and it said 70,000 deaths at that year. Last 2021, the DEA recorded. We don't have 22's numbers just yet. We should have them, I'm guessing, within any time. 2021, we had 108,000 deaths. Just to put that in perspective, we all know about COVID. COVID in 2021 had 440,000 deaths. So it's 25% of what you saw in COVID, and you don't hear anything about fentanyl. This is a serious problem, and they're not targeting anything of us or the older generation. They're targeting our kids. They're targeting from 12 years old to 19 years old. You're going to see that in a little bit. Also, for the fire and EMS, we are getting CEU hours. I'll cover some extra stuff in there for you guys. So I threw some extra slides. You should get between an hour or two. We'll see what Michelle puts in there. So if you need CEUs, make sure you sign up. What is fentanyl? Fentanyl is a prescribed medication. It's only prescribed in the hospitals. It's prescribed by physicians only. So we have prescribed and we have illicit. So what I'm going to talk about today is illicit, not prescribed fentanyl, because that's controlled. We're talking about stuff that's uncontrolled. In the DEA, we're pushing one pill can kill, and you're going to see that as we get further into our presentation. This isn't a drug that we ever had to worry about growing up in high school. If we wanted to experiment with a drug, nothing ever really, we had to worry about anything. But you actually can take a pill now. Your kids can take one pill and they are dead. If you don't have Narcan or EMS on scene within 4 minutes, it's over. So this is a famous picture. We got the penny, and the lethal dose of fentanyl is to the right. That's 2.55 milligrams. That's enough to kill a 200-pound person. To give you an idea, I don't need judgment, Mike, I'm 250 pounds. So that is enough probably to kill me because I'm not a drug user, so that is enough to put me under. These are just a few of the cases that we had in Kansas City, the metropolitan area in the last 6 months. You can see it's made the news. Libby, earlier today, she is on point. She knows anything if it had to deal with a teenager, and they've passed away probably in the last year from probably Sedalia to Topeka to the Oklahoma and Iowa border. So how did we get here? So there's two types of users. You have your habitual user that we run 6, 7, 8 times before it finally catches up to them, or it could be their second time. Then we have our young kid, or it could be a lone adult. It's one time. So back in the late 90s, early 90s, we started to see a huge increase in prescribed medication. And I always ask the crowds, how many times have you broke a bone? Has anybody been prescribed Percocet, Loratab, Norcos for the pain, hydrocodone, any of that stuff? And usually I get about 3/4 of the crowd to raise their hand. So that's what's led up to our fentanyl abuse. And it's also a lot cheaper to produce fentanyl than it is heroin, morphine, and all the other drugs. So that's what the cartels have figured out. So this graph is actually, it's gone a lot. For the 2022, I don't have the updated one, but see Kansas has a darker color. That's because Kansas is seeing an exponential increase of fentanyl deaths across the entire United States. We're seeing more deaths per capita and an increase in Kansas than anywhere else in the United States. That's just showing you the graph of deaths from 2016 to 2021. This is another scary graphic. We got Missouri on the left, which is kind of even down. Missouri has a larger population, so we're not going to see such a huge increase. But if we look to the right, that's Kansas. Those are fentanyl deaths. There's 220 deaths reported in February of 2021. It's an alarming rate in the state of Kansas of how many deaths. And I can tell you, Wyandotte County last year, we're 1/4 of that. Actually, we'll be 1/8 of that. So in the fire department, I brought our stats. Our stats are a little different PD because we actually take all overdoses. The PD side, they're on the opiate side. So last year we ran 499 overdoses, but the stat that I want to point out is that we used Narcan 182 times. Narcan is the drug that we use to counteract fentanyl or any opiate. And back when, I know some of the older medics in here, back in 2000 or 1995 when you started being a paramedic, 2 milligrams of Narcan pretty much woke up everybody. I actually got to see it, the progress of this, is about 4 years ago, we put 4 milligrams in one guy, took a tablet. He took morphine. It was laced with fentanyl. And everybody knows what happens when you slam Narcan. What happens, medics? They're quiet. They're going to start throwing up. So we started noticing it in KCK that we were seeing 2 milligrams, 4 milligrams, 6 milligrams. We've had a call this year that took 8 milligrams of Narcan just to bring them back, and then they relapsed again. So that is another brand of fentanyl. It's called carfentanil. We believe they were taking. They were taken to the hospital, recovered. They did not die because someone called 911 in time. So out of those 499 cases, 182 received Narcan. 74 of them went to cardiac arrest with Narcan. For those who are not on the fire EMS side, cardiac arrest means we were pumping on their chest, breathing for them, and giving them Narcan. So out of those 499 overdoses, 74 of them were not breathing. And then, so the other thing I started explaining is how fentanyl is taxing our system. We're seeing the Romeo and Juliet. We're not seeing one person down, we're seeing 2 people. We had a call a couple months ago. There was 4 people completely not unresponsive, 3 were full codes, so we're doing CPR on 3 people. When we show up to a call, on my truck, there's 4 of us, in ambulance there's 2. To do quality CPR, you need at least 5 or 6 people. So if I show up on a scene and I've got 3 people completely unresponsive, not breathing, and it was actually another pumper that had 3 and then 2 on the box, that's 5 people. That's a problem. Every person on that crew was doing CPR at that day on a different individual, and another person was giving Narcan to the 4th. And we had a call for 3 extra boxes, 3 extra pumpers. Well, that works in KCK. But if that happens in Leavenworth County, they only have 5 ambulances. So if that happens, you just took your entire EMS system that just got depleted in your county, and now you got your grandmother who has a heart attack. Guess what? You're going to be waiting for EMS or fire because someone decided to take fentanyl. That's what this is also doing to our community. Oh, and then we got our DEA stats. Fentanyl, the DEA seized 50 million pills in 2022, and it was 20 million, but had a lethal dose, but it's actually about 35 million, because 6 out of every 10 are considered a lethal dose now. It was 4 out of 10, but it's up to 6. We seized 10,000, almost 11,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. So this is where I start bringing in the kids, the doom and gloom, and how potent it is. So I bring my sweet low pack. I think someone had a coffee. Well, it was up here somewhere. So a sweet low pack is 1 gram. So how many lethal doses of fentanyl, or deadly doses of fentanyl do you think that is? Anybody want to take a guess? 6,400. So then I bring out my flour. This is a 2-pound bag. I use this all the time because in the drug industry, they use it called kilos. So this is the closest thing I can get to a kilo. So in a 2-pound bag, how many lethal doses do you think are here? It's 335,000. And then I got my 5-pound bag. It's over 1 million. So when you hear 10,000 pounds of fentanyl was taken or confiscated by the DEA, that's enough to kill the United States' entire population 3 times over that they've confiscated. And that's why I got involved in it, being a weapon of mass destruction. Because people are trying to hurt people with fentanyl as well, besides as a drug use. All right, for our law enforcement that's out there, this is San Diego PD. This is, I think it was last year, not this year. You're going to notice I got called for this Jeep. And he confirmed that he did have fentanyl in the Jeep. And I'm going to show you how fast fentanyl is going to take over the body.
That stuff's no joke, it is super dangerous. Gotta be really careful. I hate dealing with it. All six, send me 1141 my partner. You alright, dude? All six, go cover. Yes, code cover. All six, I need 1141, code 3. Breathe, buddy. Breathe. It's alright. Breathe. Breathe. Okay. It's alright, buddy. You're okay. Breathe. It's okay. I got you. Breathe. It's okay. Breathe. It's okay. Breathe. It's okay. Give me the air. I need Narcan. I've already administered 2. Do you think it was or did you have exhaustion? It's in the trunk. It's in that clear plastic bag right there. Yeah. It tested positive for fentanyl.
His pulse is good.
I don't have any.
And then your pulse feels great, right?
So as you can see, it took 7 minutes for him to pretty much get his airway open and going again. He was breathing a little bit on his own, but it took 8 to 12 milligrams of Narcan. Again, through the nasal, it takes a lot longer. If that was IV, it would have been a lot quicker, and it probably would have taken a lot less. But through the nasal, that's how long it takes it to work. So when you see someone go down and you see a nasal Narcan, you're going to have to give it time. So majority of our cops in KCK carry it. I think talking to Basehor PD, they're carrying it. Not sure if Lumberton County Sheriff is carrying it, but this is in the schools. The nurses do have it here. And also they're talking about some of the administrators start carrying it. So they're just carrying 1, but you're going to need at least probably 2 on most of these fentanyl calls anymore. So for the fire and EMS and PD, we had a misconception a lot that if you touch fentanyl, you're going to overdose if you touch it. That is a myth. So what we're showing here is if you were to sit in the bathtub and you covered every ounce of your body with fentanyl and laid in it, it would take 2 hours and 20 minutes before you had the effect. Before you had a lethal dose at 2.55 milligrams. So just touching it isn't what's doing it. It's actually inhaling it. And that's what that officer did. It's not because he touched it, it's because he inhaled it. So if we poured it in our hand, we have about a 15 square centimeter, 25 square centimeter, and we had it for 15 minutes, we're gonna have 75 micrograms, and it's gonna be not even to where Tylenol is. That's at 2.5 right here, anti-allergic dose or anesthetic. That's where Tylenol falls. So even if you held it in your hand for 15 minutes, nothing's gonna happen. You have to inhale it, or it has to get in through your eyes, or it has to get into your bloodstream somehow. These are some of the pills we're going to see. I'm not going to cover too much on fake pills because Captain Diaz is going to do the fake pills. But if you notice across the bottom, you're going to see some of the drug trade names. Apache, China Girl, Chinatown. You'll see Zanny bars, buses. If you hear your kids ever talking about that, you need to intervene immediately. So I actually stole this slide from Libby today. This is actually a very good demographic, or very good stat that it's a very good visual. So if you look over onto the left, in 2014, if you notice the yellow, that was fentanyl and the age-related that it had a drug-type deaths. So about 10% of all drug deaths are fentanyl in 2014. Look at 2021. But I want you to look at the numbers below. 15 to 25, that's where your peak is. That's who they're targeting. They're not targeting me. They're not targeting you. They're targeting your children. So that's what we're trying to tell the kids today. You have to be alert of what you're taking or what's going on. So we told them, if a parent doesn't give you the pill or a doctor doesn't give you a pill, don't take it. If this will stick out even more, I want you to look at the age groups. Look at a 14-year-old, 728% death increase over all age groups. And this is a scary statistic. This was a stat they had. They asked the kids, how dangerous do they view fentanyl? They view it as dangerous as cigarettes. They think heroin is more dangerous than fentanyl. That is so far from the truth, and that's what kids think. You have to teach your children that is the most dangerous drug that you're ever going to touch. So they think smoking a cigarette is going to kill you just as bad as taking a fentanyl tablet. All right, to the right is a drug bust we had in KCK over the summer. Those are Percocet, Perc 30s. I don't know if the DEA's here, but you can get on their website and you can get this actually emoji drug code. You can download it, keep it for yourself. Your kids start taking it. I can say my kids don't have phones. They want phones. I told them they're going to get them. I'm probably a horrible parent, but oh well. We're going to end up, but I would check my kid's phone, and if I start seeing drug emojis, again, that's an alert. So these are your rainbow pills. Our youngest overdose to date at KCK right now is an 8-year-old. How does an 8-year-old get a fentanyl tablet? What do you think it looks like? Candy. And these are the new lace pills that's coming out of Arizona and California. And they're mimicking the Perc 30s. So I always use the chocolate chip analogy, but I can show you right here on the screen. So the red dots are the fentanyl. This is how we mix our fentanyl. So the active substance is red, and then we have our binder. We're going to mix it all together. We're going to put it in our pill press. So right here we have remember, 6 out of 10 are considered a deadly dose. So I got 5 pills here. My first 3 are deadly doses. You go to a party, you pick out a bunch of pills, you're doing a pill party, and guess what? You grab this pill. You're fine. You're waking up, you're going to see mom and dad tomorrow. Guess what happens when you grab this pill? You don't wake up. This is actually me, not the middle. The middle is a stock photo from the DEA. But the far left is a magic bullet. That is the drug dealer's blender of choice to mix fentanyl if they're bringing pure fentanyl in, if they're mixing it here. But typically it's done south of the border. They're bringing it up. The cartels are bringing it up. So, and this is me on the right-hand side. I have the black gloves on. This is when I was in Baltimore City, and we're actually making true fentanyl tablets. We had a very weak dose of fentanyl that the DEA is providing, and we were putting them in these drug presses. So the DEA has a program, and they found out right before we were doing these pill presses, every pill press in the United States has to be registered by the DEA. You think the drug dealers are registering? They weren't, because the DEA went to register this pill press and their website didn't work. I'm sure it's fixed. That was like 2016, 2015. Signs of an overdose. We've never seen anybody not breathing, so they're going to have blue lips, pale skin, their pupils are going to be dilated, they're going to have guppy breathing, might not breathing at all, they're going to have a low, slow respiratory. If you ever come across that and you have a fentanyl overdose, people's like, what do I do if I don't have Narcan? Breathe for them. That's what they need. It's not stopping the heart, it's stopping their respiratory drive. You have to breathe for them. These are the 4 methods. Multi-step, which is this right here. And I'll have these out later if you guys want to see them afterwards. This is what we use on our ambulances. It's a 2-part. Once we get an IV established, this part gets popped off. So it goes just like this. I know, Micro, you're impressed. An EMT actually did a medic skill. So we put them together, and this is 2 milligrams. So most of our overdoses, we're getting between, like I said, 4 to 6 milligrams anymore on an overdose of KCK. Then we have our nasal, which we also can put this in a nasal. We can do nasal off of these as well. We have an adapter. Here's our nasal ones. And these are first call out of Kansas City, Missouri. They're giving these away. And also Vibrant Health. If you have a problem or ever suspect a problem in your household, take one of these. Put them in your house. Then we can do an IM. That's a lot slower. And then an auto-injector. I've not seen an auto-injector Narcan. Those are just the routes. What's going to be the fastest. So as you see, IV is the preferred method. And how does it work? The opiate comes in, it goes on the receptor, and the Narcan comes on, it kicks it off. As you can see the naloxone on the second one. Opiate goes to the receptors, Narcan comes in, naloxone, bounces it off, and it brings back your respiratory drive.
Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care. As with any drug, you need to be aware of important safety information concerning its use. Please see indications and important safety information at the end of this video. Also, please see accompanying full prescribing information in the use of this product. Narcan nasal spray is an emergency treatment for a known or suspected opioid overdose. The appropriate use of Narcan nasal spray can help you save a life. Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care. As with any drug, you need to be aware of important safety information concerning its use. If you encounter someone who is unresponsive and you suspect an overdose, first shake their shoulders and shout their name.
Kevin.
Ask if he or she is okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Check for signs of an overdose. Unresponsive to touch or voice. Breathing is slow, uneven, or has stopped. Snoring, gasping, or gurgling sounds. Fingernails or lips are blue or purple. Administer Narcan nasal spray as quickly as possible if someone is unresponsive and an opioid overdose is suspected, even when in doubt, because prolonged respiratory depression may result in damage to the central nervous system or even death. Lay the person on their back to receive a dose of Narcan nasal spray. Remove Narcan nasal spray from the box. Peel back the tab with the circle to open it. Remove and review the printed quick start guide inside the package. Hold the Narcan nasal spray with your thumb on the bottom of the plunger and your first and middle fingers on either side of the nozzle. Do not press the plunger to test or prime the device. If you do, you will waste all or part of the dose of medication. Tilt the person's head back and provide support under the neck with your hand. Gently insert the tip of the nozzle into one nostril until your fingers on either side of the nozzle are against the person's nose. Press the plunger firmly to give the full dose of Narcan nasal spray. Remove the device from the nostril after giving the dose. After you have given this medication, seek emergency help right away. Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care.
I'm with somebody who stopped breathing. I think they've had an overdose.
Move the person on their side after giving Narcan nasal spray. If possible, put their hands under their head and bend their upper leg forward. This helps prevent the person from rolling onto their stomach. This is known as the recovery position. Continue to watch the person closely. If they do not wake up or respond to your voice or touch, or if they do not seem to be breathing normally within 2 to 3 minutes, use a new Narcan nasal spray to give an additional dose in the other nostril. Acute opiate withdrawal.
All right, so that was a quick video on the Narcan. So for those who have them here in the school or PD, now you know how to use them. So that's going to be my presentation for the night. I will jump back on once we're done, but I'm going to have James Zeeb come up next. He'll be your next presenter. And then after James, we'll do John Diaz, and then we'll do a state trooper. And then afterwards, we have Leavenworth County Emergency Management, Fairmount Township Fire Department, Basehor PD, Leavenworth County Sheriff, Kansas Highway Patrol, the Leavenworth County Guidance Center. I believe DEA's out there. Make sure you go out, talk to them. They have all the information you need in regards to any type of emergency, but not just fentanyl, but plus fentanyl. And then I'll be hanging around. We can answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, good evening. Thank you for coming out. My name is James Zeeb. I'm the retired Assistant Chief with the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department. I retired at the end of last year. Did 26, almost 27 years with the fire department. Started as a firefighter, paramedic in the street. Spent a lot of my time in the hazmat unit, and eventually Assistant Chief. I was in charge of the training division and our hazmat team, and that's where I got to work with Josh. All right, so October 2018, this is my family. This is my family photo. That's me on the left with my wife Angie, then our daughter-in-law Callie, and then our youngest son Jordan. This was their wedding in 2018, just south of St. Louis, Missouri. Next to him is our oldest daughter Janelle, and her son, and my grandson, Joaquin John. Okay? He's just as ornery at 5 as he was at 2, so we have that to look forward to. Next to him is our oldest son, Justin, and Justin is who we'll talk about tonight. And next to Justin is our youngest daughter, Jana. So that was 2018, and that was a happy time. And unfortunately, it was so long ago, but we do have this photo to remember. This is our son, Justin. This was in 2019 at Christmas. Justin lived in the Kansas City, Missouri area. He worked down in the Power and Light District as a cook. He enjoyed life. He had a good time with his friends. He liked to go out with his friends. He was a good young man who treated his family very well. He wasn't perfect, and I don't think any of us are, but he was a good kid. May 14th, 2021, 03:14 hours. That's 3:14 in the morning. Now, in my role with the Kansas City, Kansas Fire Department as the Assistant Chief, I was on call every other week, 24 hours a day. So every night I slept with 2 cell phones and a pager and a radio. That's just how life was. So for my phone during the middle of the night was nothing new. As a hazmat chief, I'd be notified when our crews went out. I'd be notified of any significant events. So at 3:14 in the morning when the phone rang, I rolled over and answered the phone because that's what I normally did. I looked at the phone number. It was an 816 number. I thought, okay, a lot of our people still have 816, or some of the businesses we work with are 816 numbers. No problem. I slid it over, and I raised my phone up. And as I did, I realized I had 2 cell phones, but they had distinctly different cases. And I was answering my personal cell phone, which really caught my attention at that point in time. The voice on the other end identified himself as a nurse with the St. Luke's Hospital on the plaza, wanted to know if I was Justin's guardian or parent. Yes, I am. What can I do for you? He said, well, I'm a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital. Justin's been involved in an accident, and we need you to come down to the hospital. Okay, so tell me a little bit more. Tell me what's going on. Well, sir, we can't tell you. No. I'm a paramedic, I'm an assistant fire chief. You can tell me what's going on. No, sir, we really can't give that information. I'm not trying to not have to get out of bed and go. I'm trying to decide whether or not this is worth waking my wife up at 3:14 in the morning, who's not used to getting up that early. And I could tell by the voice on the other end of the phone that it was worth me getting her up. So I woke her up, we got dressed. It took us a little bit of time to get out of the house. Could you imagine at 3:14 in the morning, getting my wife up, getting dressed, and moving down the road? We left the house about 3:45, headed to St. Luke's from western Wyandotte County. No traffic, we made good time getting down there. We got to the hospital, went to the emergency room, went through the whole check-in procedure. Went to the desk, told them who we were. At this point in time, I'm still thinking, okay, he's been involved in an accident, he got hit by a car, or something went wrong. Nothing had really clued up in my mind yet that this may be more serious than what it was. So they sat us down in the waiting room. They said, somebody be with you in a little while. We sat there 15 or 20 minutes and someone came out and identified it was the gentleman that we had talked to on the phone, the nurse, and he said, hey, let's go into this room over here. So as we got up and started to walk towards a room, we started to walk towards a room marked as the quiet room. Well, as a 30-year paramedic, my wife, who was a ER trauma nurse at KU Med Center for 15 to 18 years, we both knew exactly at that point in time what that meant. Because as her job as an ER nurse, she had walked hundreds of families across that threshold into the quiet room. Across that threshold into the quiet room is where they tell you that your family members are no longer alive. It's not where they say, your son has a broken leg, your son has some chest trauma. This is where they tell you your family members are no longer with you. So we both stopped at the threshold. Neither one of us wanted to go across, right? Because at this point in time, I've gone from that 30-year paramedic and nurse into full-on parent mode, right? So eventually, a member from the clergy came down and walked us into the room and sat us down and told us that our son had died. He had been out with some friends in Kansas City, Missouri at a bar or a club. The story that the hospital staff was able to gather from the EMS, Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department, EMS crews that were there, was that our son was with a group of friends. Started to not feel very well, thought he'd go outside, get some fresh air. After about 10 or 15 minutes, his friends had noticed that he didn't come back, went out, found him on the side of the building, unconscious, unresponsive, not breathing. Kansas City, Missouri Fire Department was called, 911. Crews came in, did what they could to attempt to revive our son, but were unsuccessful. A lot of times, a little bit of knowledge is almost too much of a dangerous thing, right? Going through my head, I played the scenario at least 100 times that evening. What happened? What went wrong? What could have been better? My wife, as a nurse, had the same questions. Did they do this? Did they do that? Did they do? And at that point in time, it really didn't matter. Growing up, I had always heard one of the worst things you can do as a parent is bury your children. And I would say that that is the truth. One of the hardest things, undoubtedly, I will have done in my life. It took about 90 days for us to get a death certificate. And on that death certificate listed accidental fentanyl overdose. And the reason that the accidental is important is for two reasons. One, Jackson County coroner determined that our son's death was accidental because there were no other drugs in his system. No heroin, no cocaine, no opiates, no marijuana, nothing. Just the fentanyl. So as a parent, that leads me to believe what? Somebody gave my kid a drug, right? Because as a parent, I don't want to think that my son knowingly took something that he shouldn't have, right? And that's the belief that I hold on to. That's the belief that we as a family hold on to. The second part of the significance of being an accidental overdose means that the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department isn't going to investigate anything. Okay. After the funeral, we had names. We knew who he was with. Everybody had an idea of who may have been responsible for it. But since it was listed by the Jackson County coroner as an accidental overdose, the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department refused to take any action. So we'll never know exactly what happened. We'll never be able to hold anybody responsible or accountable for what happened. As a career firefighter, my wife is a nurse, we have seen this side of society, right? We've seen all the bad things that happen. We see all the bad effects of things that go on. And so we taught that to our children. You know, at 12 years old, my daughter knew when she went into a restaurant, first three things we do: identify the front exit, identify the back exit, and never sit with dad's back to the door. Right? Because that's how we raised our kids. So our children knew the dangers of drugs. We never hid anything from them. We never tried to sugarcoat, because that's not only how we made our living, but that's how we lived our lives, was with dealing with the effects of drugs and things like that. But it didn't matter. It still hit us, and it still hit us hard. So, what I would ask is that you speak to your children, regardless of their age. Our son was 36 years old. At 36, he knew better. I know that. But still something happened to him. Still something happened to him that cost him his life. Please be honest with your children. Please be aware of what's going on. Please be aware of what they're into. I would never wish this on any one of you at all. And that's why I've encouraged Josh, and I'm so appreciative of him and the school district for allowing me to come out and tell my story.
All right, thank you, James. Up next, we have John Diaz. He'll set up his presentations with KCKPD.
All right, as he said, my name is John Diaz. I'm a captain at the Kansas Police Department. I'm over the narcotics unit. And I get to wear another hat because on top of that, I get the DEA supervisor for Group 41A. We have 15 task force and agents that work for me under the DEA side, and our job is to really combat this fentanyl thing. So what I want to do tonight is the law enforcement side of what we're doing and how we're combating it, and what you guys can see as parents and talk to your kids about things I'm going to show you. So I'm not going to talk about what fentanyl is because he's already talked about it, but I do want to show you these two particular uses of fentanyl. As you see there, it's a transdermal patch. So that's what we're talking about for pharmaceutical grade fentanyl. This is what you'll get in a hospital. And over here, I don't have the appropriate term, but I call it a sucker. These particular suckers are used for cancer treatment. It's because fentanyl is used for cancer, end-of-life type care, because it's such a powerful drug. So you will never see these on the street because these are only issued in hospitals. And we talked about the cookie. So people don't really understand how powerful this is, but on the cookie on the left, you see a lot less chocolate chips, right? The cookie in the middle, everybody wants that cookie because they want a lot of chocolate chips. But over here, you have fentanyl. So that one little speck of fentanyl is a lethal dose. Which speck is the cookie in, right? Is it this chocolate chip over here or over there? And the reason I bring that up is you don't know what's in these pills, and you don't know how much is in each of these pills. While this cookie looks really good, it may be the one that has the lethal dose in it. And more likely it does because it's got more chocolate chips in it. So understand over here in this picture on the right side, that's the lethal dose that could be in that cookie or that pill or however you're ingesting fentanyl. I can give you the perspective of how it affects KCK. So you saw the national level, we have lots of overdoses, lots of deaths, but my job is to investigate overdoses. I didn't realize in Kansas, Missouri that it's issued as an accidental overdose. They don't investigate it, we investigate every overdose. And in fact, as I walked in to this tonight, my phone went off that there was another overdose in the city, and I had to send people out to go start that investigation. But you can see in 2017, we had 20 overdoses and 2 deaths. The further we go along, in 2022, those are final numbers, 174 overdoses, and every single overdose, my pager goes off, I have to roll over middle of the night, call people in to go start investigations. Sometimes I have to go in based upon who it is or what the facts are behind the case. But the big number is 40. 40 deaths in 2022 for KCK. That's not Wyandotte County, that's not Bonner or Edwardsville, that's just in the city limits of Kansas City, Kansas. So I think you said 200 deaths in Kansas last year, is that right? 220. So KCK is responsible for 40 of those. I don't know the numbers out here in Basehor or in Leavenworth County. I don't know who keeps track of those, but that is what we do on our side. So the thing we're talking about right now, juvenile deaths. Of those 174 overdoses, 16 of those guys were juveniles, and 4 ended in death. We need to stop that because 1 is too many, right? So I can talk about a few of them. One of them should be a death because they haven't died yet. They're basically brain dead, and that will go on the 22 stats. But what happened is a friend, and I use air quotes, told him we should do this drug together, and it was a mixture of methamphetamine and fentanyl. Well, that's not a good mixture to have. Sure enough, he ingested it, and moments later, he is lying on the bed, basically not breathing. Fire gets called, and they try their best. They take him to the hospital, and to this day, he cannot breathe on his own, and he will never breathe on his own with no brain activity. The suspect in that particular one, we have sent for charging. That person is in drug rehab, so we haven't been able to get him yet. But we're going to hold him accountable for what he did. I'm trying to think of another one that occurred recently. So a young couple, they were 17 and 18. They went to KCMO. They went over to purchase 2 fentanyl pills. Over there, the young man tells them, that sells them, hey, these are fentanyl. The guy knew they were fentanyl. He said, be careful with them. They come over to Kansas side, and ultimately the boyfriend takes a pill. No problems, right? Once again, 6 out of 10 are deadly, some aren't. So 4 out of 10 are safer, still not safe. The girlfriend takes it that following morning because she wanted to wait. Maybe do the buddy system, make sure what bad was going to happen. Well, ultimately, as soon as it occurs, as soon as she ingested it, and within minutes, she was lying on the floor. The boyfriend texts her father and says, I'm so sorry, let her take this pill. Ultimately, the ambulance gets there, not quick enough. There's no Narcan to give. By the time the ambulance gets there, the person dies. That person has been charged because we investigated that one fully and we had cooperation. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So we kind of went over this. He went over a little bit. Which one of these pills up here are real and fake? Let's go. The ones on my right, the lighter blue pills, by show of hands, which one are those real Percocets or fake Percocets? Who believes the ones on the right are real? Raise your hand. We got 1, 2, 3, about 10 of you. Which ones believe the ones on the left are real Percocets? Well, what if I were to tell you neither of them work? It's a trick question. Right? So they are made to look like pharmaceutical grade pills, but obviously they're not. You can't see what's inside of that pill, so you have no idea if it's real or fake. So what we've said is if you don't physically get it from a pharmacy after being prescribed by a doctor, you do not take pills. This goes for any pill. This one is not a trick. There is an actual real one and a fake one. So who believes the top one is real by raising your hands, please? Okay, we got a few of you. What about the bottom one? A little bit less. The bottom one is actually real. So you would think the one that's probably printed better would be the real one, but it's not in this particular case. Just goes to show you don't know what's in the pill or which one's real or fake by looking at it alone. This is what we've been seeing out in the streets. He kind of showed a picture of the Skittles, as we call it, for that. The only reason anyone would make these fentanyl pills, multiple colors, is to attract children to them. There's no other reason to put color in them. You got pure fentanyl right below there in the middle, and now they're putting the colors in, so when the people are making their pill presses, or pressing them in pills, they're already there for you. This is a brand new form that I just came across in an email this past week. It's a clay form. I'm not sure how they're using that yet. I will find out though, but that's a new form of fentanyl that's come through. So how are we combating this drug? Anytime an overdose occurs, we send my team out, right? So it's a detective and one of our support officers to go to recover those drugs to make sure they're put away appropriately. Because we all know they're very dangerous. So we don't want to put them in a bag and not bag it appropriately for a property officer to get it later on and have that person fall out. But we recover everything, we photograph everything, If we need search warrants, we get search warrants. And if it's a big enough scene, we call more people in. We interview people, which is our human intelligence, and this is where we're lacking. Because people don't want to talk about what happened or where they got it from, it makes it difficult for us to do our job. When I spoke to the children this morning, a lot of those kids, while they were super attentive, you could tell they didn't necessarily want to tell what they know. So you as parents have to tell your kids that if a police officer is talking to you, it is not always negative. We're not there to take them to jail. We're trying to figure out who put the poison on the streets. And if you don't tell them it's okay to talk to us, they're not going to talk to us. So we need the human intelligence to get our investigations rolling because we have other techniques we use, but they're not always foolproof. We go through social media. So the idea of going to pick these pills up in the street corner, if you think that's the way it's done, is antiquated. They're putting it on social media, then we go meet somewhere in a parking lot and ultimately buy these pills. So they're just not on the street corner slaying it like back in the 80s. This is something completely different. Facebook, Snapchat, all those social medias is how these kids are seeing where to buy these pills from. They send each other a message. So we comb social media for either the deceased or the overdose victim. We go through their cell phones. We check their text messages. Some of them are savvy enough to use apps that maybe encrypt things. Apple phones these days. I am not a fan of Apple, and this is my personal opinion. Apple makes it so difficult for law enforcement to do investigations when it comes to any sort of criminal activity. Because you have an Apple phone, it's encrypted, and the person that has that phone is the one that can unencrypt it. We have to send phones to the FBI labs, and it takes a long, long time to get that stuff done. And now Apple's making it even more difficult to get that stuff. So you as parents have a choice when you get your kid a phone. I hope we never have to search their phone, but if it is a phone that is Apple, you need to know the passcode. You need to have access to that thing. You need to tell us until it's time, right? But you need to know how to access that phone because if we need information about who they spoke to just before they took these pills or who they bought them from, you will have access to that for us. Because if you don't know it, it's going to take our grade key machine a long, long time to break into that phone after we get a search warrant. And the longer we wait, we have more cases that pile up. So another thing we do is we as a narcotics unit, we buy drugs. We buy drugs every single day. Today we had 3 buys, and 2 of the buys were fentanyl. We use our undercover officers to buy fentanyl through social media. We find out who's selling, we go out there and send our undercover to buy those drugs. We also use our CIs, so people that are arrested for narcotics, we flip them, right? And they go out and buy drugs for us to help make their charges go away. But it's for the greater good because we have them buying fentanyl. We're buying pure fentanyl powder by the ounces. We get larger cases are buying them by the kilo. So it just depends on how big of a dealer we get to. So if we buy those ounces from that fentanyl dealer, we'll arrest them, flip them, and try to get another level up. We keep trying to level up because ultimately the more we can get off the streets, the better it is for all of us. During search warrants, we are finding Narcan in these people's homes that are selling drugs. And it's not because they care about the people they're selling to. It's because if they overdose in their house, they give them Narcan and get them out of the house because the police won't be inside that house. They're not doing it to be nice people. We had a fentanyl dealer inside of a car, literally was tossing a bag of fentanyl around with a child in the back seat, measuring it out for our CI, which is insanely dangerous for that child in the back. But then he went to tell him, hey, you should go get some Narcan in case you overdose. So these people are knowingly selling poison to you, to your kids, that it could, knowing it could kill him. But this guy was nice enough to say, hey, you should get some Narcan just in case. So some of the things I want to end with for my discussion is, if it's not your pill, literally you could be gambling with your life. I have 2 children. I've told every single one of them, both of them I should say, if it's not given to you by your mother or me or a nurse or a doctor, you are not taking a pill. And I've explained that even if your friend, you have a headache and your friend says, here's an Advil, you're not taking the pill from your friend because you don't know where your friend got that pill. You got to think about that way because these pills can change hands. I'm not saying Advil's laced with fentanyl, but I'm telling my kids, generally saying, you will never take a pill unless it's from a parent or a doctor or a pharmacy or a nurse because we know where those come from. That's what you have to keep telling them. There's no quality control for illicit fentanyl. I wish I would have got the photographs from the other lady today. She got pictures of labs that are down in Mexico, and literally it's in garages and jungles, and the quality control is not there. So when you buy pills from your pharmacy, you know they're lab tested, certified. You have no idea what's in these pills. There's no quality control for illicit fentanyl. While I'm talking to all of you, it looked a lot better on a regular computer, but these apples goof up my PowerPoint just forever. Well, I'm talking to you guys because you're here, because you're interested in what's going on. All the people that aren't here are not getting this information. And we need you guys to be the voices to say, this is what I learned tonight. You need to talk to your kids, or you need to reach out to these people. We are more than happy to put these presentations on for whoever wants to listen. Because if we save one life tonight, it's worth it, right? But you guys can be our voice also. You have to go tell your friends, your family, your kids. Because we can't reach all of them, but we'll gladly try. If you suspect anyone is overdosing, this is in school, this is at home, wherever it may be, or at work, you have to call 911 right away. The time we have to get them Narcan is limited. The longer it takes, the more damage that can be done. So it is absolutely urgent that you call 911, and if you happen to have Narcan, administer it. People are worried the police are always trying to arrest everybody. That is not the case. We are not trying to arrest the user. We're not trying to arrest the person that overdosed. What we're trying to do is go after the dealer that gave them that. I cannot stress this enough. People are often afraid they don't want to call 911 because the police are going to arrest them. We will absolutely speak to them. We will try to get information to go after the dealer. That's our job. But we will not be arresting someone who just overdosed. We have a young lady at KCK who's overdosed 8 times. 8 times, every single time, Narcan has revived her. We haven't arrested her yet. It's an addiction, and we understand that. But she hasn't helped us yet either. So we're hoping one of these times she's going to say this is just holding a pill. Only time will tell on that one. So the last tool that we use, it's not the last, one of the other tools we use is a canine. During our search warrants, right, we don't like to necessarily search an entire house by hand, and so we use our canine partners. While this is not our canine, this is the trooper's one, we do have a canine that's attached to our unit. But I'll let the trooper talk about his canine, and then I'll show you a demo on this.
Hello, my name is Brian Clark. I'm a trooper with the Kansas Highway Patrol. I've been with the Highway Patrol for about 15 years. This is my dog named Chase. How many of you guys have watched Paw Patrol? Yeah. He came home and my kids decided he kind of looked like Chase, so the name kind of stuck. He's about to turn 9 years old, and actually this may be his last demo because he retires next month and goes to live the life of a actual pet on the couch. He is a dual-purpose narcotics dog. He's trained in 4 odors when it comes to narcotics: meth, heroin, marijuana, and cocaine. Now, that is not to say that he won't indicate on fentanyl, which he has before. The reason why that is because when we work the interstate, he typically, these labs down in Mexico, it's not a one-stop, they're just making fentanyl. They're making meth, they're packaging cocaine, they do sloppy work, they package it all together, and for his benefit, he's able to find it. He's been very successful through his career. He's been on the road for about 7 years. He's found about 2,000 pounds in narcotics over his career. We typically work the interstate west of Topeka, look for large loads of drugs. He's found about $4 million in drug currency over his career, which paid for himself. Now he's an expensive dog. When we bought him 7 years ago, he was a little over $9,000. Who would pay $9,000 for a pet, right? So he is a passive indicator. So you'll see it here in a second, but he will. So, quick story. All you parents take your kids to Walmart, right? and they act bad because they know you can't smack them in Walmart. This is his Walmart. So earlier today, I hid some what's called, or what basically is cotton. Good. So he does all his work for this little toy. And I'm going to set it down because he's going to get pretty loud here in a second. Now I want you to notice how focused he is, right? Off. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to upset a lot of people. A lot of people think these dogs are so smart. Hate to break it to you. He actually believes that pipe's coming out of there. So what we do, he thinks we take those odors and we store it with this pipe. Now his ancestors used to be great hunting dogs, rabbits, squirrels. So they used to chase things that moved a lot. And if you watch him back there, you can see he's focused in on that. So we take this, when we first start training them, and make it their toy. We make it, they think this is their rabbit, their squirrel. We store it with the drug odor. It just becomes that natural reaction. When they smell that odor, they're gonna find their rabbit. That's it. Oh, now see, he's sneaking up there thinking, fine. See, he already thinks it's back in here and it's in my hand. Oh. He will pretty much do anything for this toy. Now, can anybody tell me what kind of dog he is? And don't say German Shepherd or he's going to get offended. Who said Belgian Malinois? He is a Belgian Malinois. And you don't see them as pets because they make terrible pets. They're terrible pets. They're always chewing on something. They're always chewing on something, whether it be your furniture, your clothes, your house, his toy. He hates this trick. Okay, I'm going to take him back out to the car. Unfortunately, he is a dual-purpose dog, so he does apprehend people. So he is not a lover. He's not a hugger. He's not a toucher. He'd rather you not touch him. For me, he'll let me touch him all day long, but he just doesn't like people touching him.
So while he's on our canine, like I said, we do have two canines in KCK. One's a narcotics only canine, which is attached to my unit, and then we have a dual-purpose dog similar to that. We're kind of wrapping up, and we will be available for any questions at all, for any of the presenters out here tonight that you want to ask in the open. No. Yes, ma'am. So the question was, how much do fentanyl pills typically cost? So it depends on how much you buy, right? Buy in bulk, you get better prices. So we as a police department, if we buy a couple hundred pills, we're paying $5 to $7 a pill. If we're buying a couple thousand pills, we're getting them from $2 to $3 a pill. But if you as a user are buying 1 to 10 pills a piece, you're talking $10 to $15 per pill. I don't have a good answer for you on that. I mean, we're good human beings and we don't want to hurt our children. So I don't know why. They want addiction, right? Because if you have addicted users, they're going to keep coming back with more money. And if you start them younger, right, then they're going to be lifelong users, maybe, if they get past not dying in between the 6 to 10 pills, the 6 to 10 pills that are people overdoses. What's that? Opioids. No, it's a synthetic opioid, and opioids are highly addictive. Yes, ma'am. It does. So if our police dog, he's also a passive alerter. So our dog will sit just like his dog did. We don't want them scraping at the drugs. or biting the drugs because ultimately it gets in their system, and we have a dog who's overdosed. And so we do have Narcan for our dogs that's on our handler every time we go out for any search warrants or car stops and like that, just to save our dog, because they are very, very expensive, and to the handlers, their family. Any other questions? Yes? So the only best guess I can give you, and unless John has a better DEA in the back with my boss back there, Kansas has I-70 and I-35. And we are literally right in the middle, breadbasket of America, and so all the highways come through us, and we're right there. So that's my best guess. John, any better answer? Nope. Nothing better in the back. All right. Yes, ma'am. Or yes.
What is the allure of the fentanyl when people realize that it is so dangerous?
Well, it's an opioid. So an opioid has a high, and fentanyl is a cheaper high because they used to get Percocets, the prescription, but since the doctors aren't prescribing it anymore, they have to get their high. So fentanyl is a cheaper high, which is still not cheap. You're paying $10 to $15 a pill. Yes, sir.
Is there anything that law enforcement has that can help you detect the presence of fentanyl in the air on a scene like that?
It's just like a police officer, it's odorless and tasteless. So, no. And when there are overdoses, I failed to talk about that. If you are a family member that walks in on someone that is overdosed and say it's powder fentanyl or they've crushed a pill, do not move anything because you don't want that in the air, right? Because then you could be a victim of an overdose. So immediately render aid to the person that is overdosing, but call the police and the firemen right away. But do not move or touch any of that powder because you want to do something to your body. Yes?
You said getting them mouth to mouth, keep them breathing, but there can't be hanging on their lips.
Well, so if they take it orally, like the pill, right? So it's all the binders and a little bit of fentanyl, that's going to be ingested in their system. If they're snorting it or smoking it, you're right, that could be an option there too. It just depends on how they're taking it. Yep. Nope. You could be overdosed on cocaine. We could give you 100 doses of Narcan. It will never hurt you. So it doesn't hurt to give anyone Narcan at all. Yes, sir.
Is there any other medical things that might be going on with Narcan that be a bad thing to do?
I don't think so. Correct? Thank you.
There's not. There's some type of anemia that I don't think is very, very rare. I can absolutely know.
So when in down, Narcan's not a bad deal. How much does it cost?
So it is free for some people. Some people have to get a prescription and go to CVS and buy it. As you spoke about, First Call can give some free doses out. There are other places, DACA in Lawrence. They will also help you get Narcan. So it just depends on what you're doing. But you can absolutely walk straight up to a pharmacy with no prescription and buy Narcan. I would call the pharmacy ahead of time to make sure the Narcan's available because lots of people are buying it. Like I said, we're finding it in drug dealers' houses because they go buy it themselves.
We also have a new program, KCK, Vibrant Health, so that if they're seeing, take 6 to 7 overdoses before someone wants help, wants to get help. So we're leaving a Narcan kit behind with those, if they ask for it, we document it. So Vibrant Health is doing that. And also for the detection, there's a detection pee strip, I think it's a urine strip, and also a pill strip. I think they're legal to have, I have to ask the DEA. Vibrant Health is because they're wanting to know those pills, because they're going to take them, they can crush it or test part of that pill to see if there's fentanyl in it. So Vibrant Health is, we're leaving those on the scene right now. That's only a 6-month program. I don't know if it's going to get completed in KCK. And then us and Overland Park are the only 2 fire departments right now in the metro who have an FTR who can actually see fentanyl. I can tell you right now, our hazmat chiefs are not going to allow us to test it for fentanyl.
And just on the testing strips, understand this. In the pill, you may 2.5 milligrams, right? It's a lethal dose. In that whole pill, you have to find it. So when we tested at our place, we use a machine called the TrueNarc, and it shoots a laser into the pill. If that laser beam doesn't hit that fentanyl, it doesn't test for fentanyl. So we have to find where it's at. So multiple times, we're doing multiple scans to try to find, is this fentanyl or not? When we buy powder fentanyl as pure, it's easy, but in the pill form, it's difficult to test. So I don't know how good those test strips would be. You had a question? Yes, ma'am.
So all the drugs come up from Mexico and they're packaged together, so to speak, I guess. So are they lacing all drugs with fentanyl, or is it just fentanyl by itself? You know what I'm saying?
Right. So we have arrested people with meth that's laced with fentanyl, but the dealer told the user, hey, by the way, this is laced with fentanyl. The pills you're seeing are not laced with fentanyl. They're literally made with fentanyl. So that's just what they're doing. Now, we've only seen meth. I have not seen any other drug, but I'm sure that they lace it in other things too, because it is a cheaper high. Yes, sir. The only Narcan that would be available to you would be the 4 milligram, wherever it went to. This guy right here. That's what's available for you guys to get at at CVS's or Walgreens, wherever you want.
How much does that cost?
It depends on your insurance. And once again, it's free if you go to certain locations, right? But some people say they're paying $40 to $60 for this. But if you're paying $40 to $60, you probably know you have someone that's going to need it one day, so it's worth every penny, right? Any other questions?
Here in the red shirt.
The back right here, the little kid.
How many people get addicted to it a year?
I don't have an answer for that. That will say a lot. I really don't know. Yes, ma'am.
So, which on there is not, not too close and things like that. Are you seeing this in anything else that they're trying to get kids into, like any other type of food, or they should be on there, and it's just don't take anything that anybody can do. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have a pee or eating a gummy or.
Right, so everyone's worried about Halloween, that they're going to put fentanyl in candy, right? Fentanyl is not free. So drug dealers just aren't putting fentanyl in things that they're giving away for free. I'm not saying you don't have some crazy people out there that would do that, but I have not seen that. It is in narcotics. That's what I've seen so far. You see anything different, John? Okay. So my DEA partner back there says he hasn't seen it. They're not just going to put it in things like that. The main thing for me is you don't take the pill unless, once again, given by your parent, nurse, doctor. No matter what. Even if your best friend gives you a pill, you're not taking that pill because you don't know your friend got it. Yes, ma'am.
What about like marijuana or things based on that?
People can smoke fentanyl. In fact, one of the people that we arrested was smoking fentanyl. He had it on his person and had a bunch of it on it. But I have not seen it. Marijuana doesn't mean they can't sprinkle on marijuana, because you're multiple drugs and you mix together to try to get a different high. Right here, yes, ma'am. From an opioid overdose, Narcan is what we use. That's what firemen use, it's what the hospital uses. So as far as I know, that is the antidote for that, assuming there's not so much in your system that can't overcome it.
Parents aren't going to say another one just because it happened here. Baser had an overdose.
You know?
So Baser actually had an overdose. We've had overdoses at KCK, at Piper, Schlegel, all the high schools. It seems like we're seeing them become more prevalent. It actually happened here at the middle school. But that was a benzo. It was an actual parent's prescription the kids brought to school and they took. If they take an actual benzo, it's not an opiate. So when we say Xanny or the Xanax, what they're doing, the drug dealers are mixing the fentanyl with to make it look like a Xanax. But if you overdose on a true Xanax, which is a benzo, you need amiodarone, which we do not carry in KCK. They don't carry it in Leavenworth County. So the only thing we can do if you overdose on a benzo is to transport quickly. So if they're gonna, and you can lace an actual Xanax tablet, a true Xanax tablet with fentanyl if you make it to a liquid form and squirt it on it. So then that gets twofold. So now our Narcan's not gonna work. We're gonna slam a ton of Narcan and still not bring them back so that they're on a benzo. So that's another cause of concern, but we're not seeing that, but that did happen here a couple months ago. So I don't know if you're aware, but it's going around. And once parents knows that they have a 12, 13, 14-year-old experimenting with that, all the way to your 17 and 19-year-olds, that is an issue. That's why we're here talking to all of you. Go ahead.
A quick question. We all got that notice, but it wasn't told to
I'm gonna give that to Sherry.
What she comes up,
She can answer that, yeah, she'll answer that for you.
There was another question in over here, I saw a hand go up.
That was actually my same question, because I had heard about it. My son's not even in this school, but just being that the child was so young and not knowing that the parents hadn't heard about it, it seems like it's something that's kind of pushed under the rug. And not, I understand that there's like children's privacy, but we need to know what's going on so we can be aware for our kids.
Any questions non-school related?
I guess that was my question, is there like a statistic besides what the school, if the school is not gonna be putting out information for the confidential reasons, is there somewhere else parents can go to look, like with the city or other places where we can get demographics on it to know what's going on if the schools aren't gonna put it out?
So I can't answer for Basehor or Leavenworth County. They're the ones that would be the holders of that information. If you call me as the captain of KCK Narcotics, I'll say this is how many overdoses we had, and this is how many deaths we've had. I will share that information any day, but I don't have access to their system, and they would be able to probably help you with that. So I would ask them as soon as we're over, and they'll help you. Any other questions? And once we're done here, like I said, we strongly suggest you guys go outside. The DEA's got stuff set up out there with the emojis for the drug emojis and other things, and we'll talk to you privately.